What's going on, traders? We got a lot to talk about in this video, but before we start, like, subscribe, comment your thoughts below. Let's get into the video. So this week was pretty interesting, and by interesting, I mean very, very lackluster. We look at the Nasdaq daily time frame, and we pretty much just consolidated all week. We didn't really go anywhere, and we had unemployment data. You would think something would happen off that. We had Jerome Powell speaking. You would definitely think something would happen off that. But nothing's happened, guys. We pretty much are in the same spot that we've been in all week. We didn't go much higher. We didn't go much lower. And so that leads me to believe, and I've been saying this in like the past two videos, that what if we priced in a lot of this data that we got already? And so if we did price in a lot of this data, which is, rate cuts coming in September, so on and so forth, what is the catalyst that can bring us to all-time highs or break us down? And at this point, I think it's safe to assume that Nvidia earnings is the catalyst that's going to either give us all-time highs or break us further down. And if you don't believe me, I mean, really think about what was the main catalyst that got us our previous all-time highs. It was Nvidia earnings. It was AI. It was this whole hype about AI, right? Last earnings season, we pumped for like 6 months straight just based off Nvidia all alone. Semiconductors were solo carrying the market. We saw even Apple dropping that whole time, and semiconductors were the main catalyst that brought us to all-time highs and just continued to pump the market. And despite what bad news we did come in, that bad news would immediately go away and the market would just continue to pump just based off Nvidia earnings. And then you saw this mass fluctuation of good news constantly coming in, just coming in for months on months straight off semiconductors, and the market will continue to react off that. And I've been saying this for quite some time. For those of you who've been on this channel for a long time, is that I don't think the market truly cares about Fed rate cuts, CPI. I don't. The market shows all the time that it does not care about this information. It shows it all the time. I mean, it shows that it cares about big tech earnings. Why? Because big tech earnings is what makes this nation money. Okay. Those are the things that truly makes this nation money. Those are the things that truly pump or dump the market. And if you have companies like Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, if these companies start to fail, then that is the true sign of a potential recession, right? And that's why I always say I never thought the market cared about anything else but big tech earnings, because those are the things, and it's been proven time and time again. You can look back in history, and it's been proven time and time again. The market barely reacts to CPI data, it barely reacts to unemployment claims. But when you have good tech earnings or bad tech earnings, you see that reaction last for months. Okay, so I just want you guys to keep that in mind. All right, so that's my thought process. I truly think the main catalyst that's going to either bring us to all-time highs or even lows would be Nvidia. So we do have Nvidia earnings Wednesday. We'll talk about that in a bit. So right now, my targets for the Nasdaq still remains the same. We're looking at 20,300, 20,500 to the upside. If we do just so happen to break to the downside or just start heading towards the downside, then I'm looking at a move all the way down to about 19,250, 19,300. Will mitigate this fair value gap and then potentially head higher. I'm not necessarily bearish at the beginning of next week. I do think we're going to start seeing more upside next week and possibly start heading towards this 20,300, 20,500 range. We look at the ES, it's pretty much the same thing. ES does have a bullish engulfing candle on the daily time frame, so that leads me to believe that we could be seeing more upside. The only issue is that we're still within this daily supply and demand zone, so it may take some time to play out. If anything, worst case scenario, we potentially just consolidate in here until maybe Nvidia earnings before we break higher, or we potentially break lower. One or the other. I'm not saying Nvidia earnings is going to come in good. I'm not going to say it's going to come in bad, but I do have my thoughts on it. We'll get into that in a bit. But right now, we do have fair value gaps that need to be mitigated to the downside. Whatever causes that is up in the air, but I imagine if something was to cause that, it would be Nvidia earnings. So that's what I'm looking at in regards to the ES. Let's look at the triple Qs. And so the triple Qs, I mean, we're still at 480. We're at 480. We didn't, like I said, if something was to cause us to really just go to all-time highs or even start heading there, you would think that last week or this previous week would be the cause of that. And we're not even making any attempts to head towards all-time highs. So it just leads me to believe that a lot of this stuff has been priced in already. The market does not care. Jerome Powell stuck to what he said. The Fed has stuck to what they said. So the market is just pretty much like, okay, cool. They didn't change anything. We can just relax until whatever next catalyst is. And the next catalyst just so happened to be Nvidia earnings. And so we look at the triple Qs, we're still at 480. We're still within this daily supply and demand zone. We haven't broke higher. We haven't broke lower. We have this bearish engulfing candle. And one thing I want you guys to know about bearish engulfing candles is that they don't have to play out right away. Here's a good example here. You have this bearish engulfing candle, and then you start to slowly creep up, and then you gap down. All right. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but look how close we are to mitigating this fair value gap right here at around 490, 492. And right here, there's a gap all the way to about 494, 496 range, somewhere around there. So, I mean, we can slowly creep up and possibly break down, just like we saw up here with this bearish engulfing candle. So that's one thing I want you guys to. Traders have a huge misconception that a lot of patterns have to play right away, like the immediately the next day, and that can happen. You know, it happens all the time. But a lot of times the market will trap you, and I mean, it's kind of looking like we're looking at the same scenario here. But I won't get too deep into that. But what I will say is that this fair value gap up here at around 490, between 490 496, needs to be mitigated, and I imagine the market is going to want to do that. And that's another thing. It seems like we're stalling. It seems like we're really stalling because either the market thinks we don't have much upside left, and so we're stalling into Nvidia earnings. So maybe we just slow pump onto this mitigated fair value gap, get rid of it, and then maybe Nvidia earnings comes in, I don't know, bad, or I wouldn't even say bad, just the market wouldn't be surprised by it, and then we drop. Okay, so I mean, we could be looking at the same scenario here, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Let's look at SPY. SPY, I mean, same thing, guys. We don't have much to go off of here. We're looking at the daily time frame, and look, we just consolidated all week. I would think someone would think this is weird that all that news last week, all the hype last week, and we didn't get nothing. We didn't move at all. The rate cuts was confirmed for September. The Fed are all on the same page, but we didn't go anywhere. I mean, you would think we will make an attempt to start heading towards all-time highs, and we just didn't get that. So again, has a lot of this information been priced in? And so I don't really have much for the SPY here. I mean, we're at previous highs pretty much. I mean, there's not much to go off of here. Now, what I will say is that if we can break above 566, 565 psych level, then we definitely can head to 570. You guys know my all-time high target is 580 right at the top of this channel here. If you're new to the YouTube channel, then you see we've been trading within this channel, this rising channel for about a year now. So I do imagine if all-time highs was on the table, that we were going to head towards the top of this channel, hit about 580, and then we can potentially go as high as 600 on the SPY. But we'll talk about that once we actually go somewhere. And that's pretty much all I have as far as the futures and ETFs. We can look at Bitcoin. I believe in my last video I said I have a target of Bitcoin to about 63K. We hit 63K, and now I think 65K is on the table. Right now, highest I'm looking at is about 68K. We are in a trade. We're in coin trade. Well, actually, I gave the option to trim contracts. So some people might be in coin trade. So congratulations to everybody who took profit on coin. We got in coin when it was around 203, 202. We did 215 calls for this week, this upcoming week, August 30th. As you guys can see, up about close to 3K, 100% on the play. A lot of people took this trade. So congratulations to everybody who took this trade. I trimmed contracts. I'm still holding this. I do have a price target on coin as high as about 230. Lowest I'm looking at is about 220. So, and Bitcoin looks great. I mean, like I said, I think a price target on Bitcoin is 65K. As you guys can see, we broke back above the daily 200 daily SMA. We broke above this fair value gap as well. So, I mean, the sky's the limit right now for Bitcoin. I think it's going to continue higher. Do I think it's going to start heading towards all-time highs? I wouldn't say that quite yet. Um, in order for us to start looking towards all-time highs, in my opinion, for me, I would love to see Bitcoin get above 70,500. Right now, we're just not like really close to that right now. You guys see right here, we've been trading within this channel within Bitcoin. We've been bouncing back and forth. So if we can break out of here, then I think all-time highs is definitely on the table for Bitcoin. But for now, first target is 65K. After that, I'm looking at 68K. And again, we're holding 215 calls on coin. until Friday. Some people took profit. I always give the option towards the end of the day to take profit, or you can continue to hold into the price target, or you trim contracts. So I always recommend to pay yourself in the Discord. But that's what I have for Bitcoin. Now let's get into the good stuff. This is the part where you really want to stick around. Okay, we're going to talk about Nvidia. And so first, we're going to actually look at Nvidia, right? We're going to look at the options chain. You guys love the options chain. We're going to do all that. We're going to really get deep into this, okay? And so, Nvidia. So, in my personal opinion, this is just pure speculation. I don't think Nvidia is going to see past 150. I could be wrong. Okay, I could be absolutely wrong. I don't see it right now. 150 prior to the split is about 1500 on Nvidia. So I don't think that's going to happen. Can it go higher from here? Absolutely. But beyond that, I just don't think Nvidia is going to go past 150. Okay, so past 150 will be right here. Well, above this trend here, you guys see we've been pretty much bouncing here. This is the daily time frame right here, and then we broke through, we gapped down, and it looks like we're heading back towards it to retest it. Okay. Can we go a little higher than 150? Absolutely. But in regards to like really pumping past it, I just don't see it right now. I think we're just going to head here and then potentially head down. Now, whether earnings causes this move or we see this move prior to earnings is up in the air. But that's my thoughts in regards to Nvidia. Now, that's not it. We got a lot more to talk about here. So let's look at the options chain in regards to Nvidia. So when we're looking at the options chain in regards to Nvidia, there's not much to go off of. Now we do have like, we have calls coming in, of course. We have 129 calls with a 16.8 million premium. We have 128 calls with a 21 million premium. These 65 puts, if you guys are looking at this, because I know you guys can't really see the premium, these 65 puts, very low premium. Wouldn't even worry about that. 60, what is this? 60 put, August 30th, very low premium. It's 160K. Um, but then you have this 125 put for 12 million, August 30th. The 70 puts 197K, 127 cost. But my overall point in going over this, and then you have the highest I've seen so far is this 141 call for August 30th, which is a 1 million premium. So you're not seeing anything beyond 150. Okay, you see these 180 calls for October, but the premiums are extremely low. Okay, when I'm looking at premiums, when I'm looking at contracts on options chain, I go for the millions. Okay, that's what I do. You do what you want. I go for the millions when I'm looking at the options chain. And I just don't see anything significant that tells me Nvidia is going to go absolutely ballistic. And Nvidia can beat earnings. By all means, it can absolutely beat earnings. But it has to surprise. All right. It has to like really blow investors out of the park in order to like really take off. And I think at some point it has to slow down. Okay. It has to slow down. Well, companies cannot just keep beating their earnings. Okay, you're not going to see that. At some point, they're going to like have an earnings where they're like slowing down, or they just can't beat what they did last earnings. And at some point, it may not happen this earnings. It can happen next earnings, whatever the case may be. Nvidia is going to slow down. I mean, it's been blowing each earnings out of the park. And so I expect it to have to do the same. And if it doesn't do the same, then investors are not going to much react, either not react to it much, or we're going to see a drop in Nvidia because it's going to be expected that they beat. So they have to surprise, in my opinion. They just have to absolutely blow everybody out of the park like they've been doing the past few earnings in order for the market to start wanting to see all-time highs or Nvidia to carry the market to all-time highs. So we'll have to see. Now, here's my worry. All right. And I showed this in the Discord. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. So, SMH. So, if you don't know what SMH is, it is a ETF for semiconductors. And one of its main holdings is Nvidia. Number one holding, Nvidia. Hopefully, you guys can see this. So, number one holding, Nvidia, 38 million shares. Okay. I'm not going to read that whole number. All right. But regardless, you got 38 million shares on Nvidia as regards to SMH. We look at the options chain for SMH. That's what I originally wanted to do. We look at the options chain for SMH and you see nothing but puts coming in. Nothing but puts, guys. Now, granted, a lot of these puts have low premiums, but the ones that have high premiums, you got 145 puts for August 30th, 1 million premium. If we look at SMH chart, it is nowhere near 145. I'm pretty sure. This thing is at close to 250, guys. And someone, an institution said, hey, 145 puts. All right. You have another put, 237.5 puts. Our AI bot actually alerted this. So I definitely think this is possible. If any, if way more than 145 happening, I could be wrong. But if SMH has to 145, the market could be looking at a slight crash, okay, or a very, very huge correction. You have 237.5 puts, you have 247.5 puts. But as you guys can see, there is nothing but red, just red, red. All right, there's nothing but puts coming in, and this can change. This can absolutely change. We maybe you start seeing calls come in Monday, whatever the case may be. But SMH hasn't really dropped last week. All right, it just hasn't. It's pretty much been pumping majority of last week. So for all these puts to come in on the options chain, it hasn't really reacted to these yet. And it doesn't necessarily mean just because these puts come in that SMH has to react right away, but it is something to think about here, where what if this 145 put is legit? All right. So I just really want you guys to pay attention to that. So another thing I want you guys to pay attention to is that we have an inverse head and shoulders pattern forming. All right. We have an inverse, we have our shoulder here, we have a head here. And if we just so happen to start rolling over here, and I wouldn't say like roll over at this point, but if we can get mitigate this fair value gap at around 260, we'll say 260, 270 range, and we start rolling over, that's our next shoulder being formed, and then our neckline will be at the 200 range. All right. So something to really think about here, something to really pay attention to here. So feel free to mark this on your charts, guys. Head and shoulders, a lot of traders have this misconception that head and shoulders have to be upright. They have to be like super perfect. No, they can be slanted. They could be hideous. They're still head and shoulders pattern. All right. If it looks like the pattern, assume that it is until proven otherwise. Now, again, it hasn't played out completely, so this can be speculation, whatever the case may be. But it's really, really starting to look clean. Okay, I will say that much. So if SMH has higher between Monday and Wednesday and starts filling in this gap, that's when I will worry. That's when I will worry. Now, as far as this 145 puts on the options chain, if we look where that is very, very far down. And granted, we do have a lot of gaps to the downside on regards to SMH. A lot of gaps that has not been filled. We have a gap all the way down to about 140. What else? We have a gap here at around 175. So there is a lot of gaps to the downside. Let's see if we see any fair value gaps. Let's go to a bigger time frame. Maybe we'll see some fair value gaps to the downside as well. So we also have fair value gaps. Let's see if there's one all the way down to 145. No, don't see one. But there is one all the way down to 170. All right. Now, what I will say is that maybe these are hedges. Okay, maybe these are just hedge positions just in case Nvidia earnings does kick the bucket. Okay. Um, Maybe these are hedges in case Nvidia actually really does good. That's what I meant to say. If Nvidia has like crazy earnings, they blow everybody out the park, they go higher. Maybe these are just hedges just in case. All right. So I wouldn't take these at, face value. Maybe they're just simply hedges. I mean, this 145 put is absolutely insane to me. But it does have me concerned that something might be coming. All right. If we hit that low, that's insane. I might actually take these. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I mean, they're probably really cheap. So, um, but we can treat those as hedges. Let's look at another semiconductor ETF that Nvidia is under. SOXX. SOXX is showing the exact same thing here. You have a potential inverse head and shoulders pattern on a weekly time frame, and you have one forming on the daily time frame. Right now, we're at this trend here on SOXX. And if you don't believe me, Nvidia definitely falls under SOXX, or it's one of the number one holdings. You guys see here, number one holding Nvidia. This is a little small, so hopefully you guys can actually see that. Yeah, here we go. Nvidia, I mean, it's right here. 32 holdings as of August 22nd, 2024. AVGO Nvidia. So SOXX showing a sign that it is forming a potential head and shoulders pattern here. And we have a fair value gap all the way at the 250s range. So if SOXX, if it doesn't start rejecting here, I mean, it is kind of rejecting here actually, but if it just so happens to pump higher into next week and start mitigating this fair value gap at all the way at the 260s, 270s range, 250s range, that can look bad. I would be worried. And so we look at SOXX on the options chain. I can't remember if I actually checked this out, but we'll check right now. Nothing but puts, just like we saw on SMH. Nothing but puts, guys. All right. So we have 215 puts. This is a leap play all the way in March. We can go back in time actually. I meant to do that on SMH as well, but nothing but puts. Nothing but puts. No trades came in for that day. And then you have a 265 call. Let's see the premium. It's only 170K premium. So again, nothing but puts coming in for these semiconductor ETFs. And again, maybe it's just hedging. You can say that. All right. Maybe they're just hedging. Maybe Nvidia, they have calls on Nvidia, and maybe they're just hedging these ETFs. I personally don't think so, but do what you want with that information. All right. So that is my thoughts in regards to semiconductors. What I will say is that based off what we're seeing off SMH, based off these possible head and shoulders patterns that's forming, I will be very, very, very cautious. Nvidia earnings has the potential to really, really drop the market if it fails. All right. If it beats, then if it beats and it's not a surprise beat, then it'll probably hold the market stable, if anything. But if it fails, we're and these play out, okay, and these play out on SMH and SOSX, things can be very, very bad. If they have a surprise beat, like they just blow everybody out the park, then by all means, we can see all-time highs. All right, so that's my thoughts heading into this upcoming week. There won't be a video tomorrow. I really don't have much to go over in regards to the overall market heading into tomorrow. I might make a video on stocks that I'm looking at, so be on the lookout for that. But other than that, that's all I have for this video, guys. Hopefully you got something out of it. Discord link is in the description below. Until the next video, have a good one, traders.